Homeless children forced to seek food at the house of a man-eating witch. They originally planned to eat and run. Unexpectedly, they were caught on the spot. To their surprise, they discovered the witch was actually a kind and gentle big sister. The cat named Daisy housed a dog's soul while the dog Rady contained a cat's soul. Her peaceful life finally saw a change that day. I've heard that you locked up such lovely children and abused them. I can't let you take the children away. You'll just lock them up again unless you promise me to be a good guardian to the children. But the Grand Duke scoffed, a man-eating witch telling me to be a good guardian. When I find evidence, I will surely execute you. This made the little ones react even more intensely, tugging at their brother and shouting that Huey's wasn't a bad person. They even threatened to not go home unless he returned with them to the Grand Duchy. Looking at the crying children, Huey's felt reluctant to part, but that was still the children's home. So she comforted them, saying she would write letters. If there are words you don't recognize, ask someone to read them to you. Luna finally climbed into the carriage, still sniffling. Brother, promise us you won't kill Huey's. And you must thank her for taking care of us. Didn't you always teach us not to forget to be grateful? The Grand Duke reluctantly thanked Huey's. However, he still believed in his heart that she had manipulated the children. Huey's watched the carriage disappear into the distance. Thinking of the time she had spent with the children, Cheese couldn't help but shed tears. A few days later at the Grand Duke's mansion, Luna and Luca were fully armed. Huey's discovered two little thieves eating outside her window. The boy, who hadn't eaten in a long time, was moved to tears. At their sister's command, the two quickly ran forward. They had to get into the carriage before being discovered. Just as the servants were about to come, the two hid in the carriage, not daring to make a sound. Hearing the servants prepare to depart, the two were overjoyed. It seemed they had succeeded. Now they could go find Cheese. However, the next second, the Grand Duke lifted the curtain. You're not going anywhere. Did you think I would fall for the same trick again? The siblings were all packed up, ready to escape from their brother, but before they could leave, they were caught. The same strategy and no longer worked on him. The Grand Duke then brought the two little ones back to the mansion. He instructed the servants to thoroughly check all carriages and luggage leaving the estate from now on. The little ones were already upset about not escaping. And at dinner, they couldn't even get a piece of chocolate. The Grand Duke was also at his wits' end with his younger siblings. Not only did he have to guard against the royal family schemes, but he also had to constantly watch over the mischief of his children because he never knew when danger would reach out to them like a demon's claw. At this moment, the chef hesitated whether to serve that dish. He couldn't believe the young master and miss would actually like it. As expected, Luna and Luca were very shocked to see this dish. It was the beef stew with carrots that Huey's used to make. But his sister quickly covered his mouth. Be quiet, this is the cannibal witch's house. But to everyone's surprise, the children actually ate the carrots in it. Just as the chef was moved to tears by this, Luna couldn't help but want to spit out the carrot. Why does this carrot taste like the soil from the backyard? Luca also weakly expressed, I want to eat Huey's carrot cake. The Grand Duke refused his brother's request. Luna angrily pulled her brother along and left the dining room. They silently returned to their room and began a hunger strike. They wouldn't come out unless the nanny came. But having you chased away all the nannies we hired before, not that nanny. We want you to bring you eyes. The Grand Duke couldn't understand what magic the witch had cast. The children who had always seen nannies as enemies were now clamoring for her to be their nanny. And they even compared her to him, their brother. I've told you Hugh Eyes is a good person. Do you see any bite marks on us? Luca directly grabbed the Grand Duke. Brother, let's go find Hugh Eyes together. In the end, their brother still refused. At this moment, a knight informed him that the palace had issued a decree. The Grand Duke had no choice but to leave first. This time, the decree inevitably meant going on an expedition, as the eldest son in the family and the only one who could protect the children. He always wanted to become reliable, but occasionally he still felt very tired. On the other side, he was returned to her lonely life after the children left. Hugh Eyes looked at the two adorable little ones, guessing they might be the protagonist of the story. A few days ago, she had sent her cats and dogs over to check on the children's situation. She discovered that their house was very spacious and the food was abundant. The children were living better than they had with her. After all, no one would entrust children to a witch to raise. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, she found it was the Grand Duke. It turned out that the decrees sent last time also required an expedition. This year, he had lost count of how many times it had been. Each time was very dangerous and surviving was no easy feat. But what worried him most was still his younger siblings. Fortunately, the investigation of the carrot cake last time showed no problems at all. Although there were very scary rumors before, it was said that a few years ago, the witch's appearance completely changed. From that day on, all evil deeds stopped. Did the originally evil witch really want to sincerely take care of the children? To verify his thoughts, the Grand Duke came to Huey's cottage. From the footprints pacing outside, it was clear he had hesitated for a long time. Miss Huey's, do you have a moment? Huey's knew he must have come for a reason. Thinking of how he didn't trust her before, she angrily said she was busy planning to take the cats and dogs out to pick mushrooms. Unexpectedly, the Grand Duke followed Huey's all the way. She tried her best to appear cold. Huey's, a former kindergarten teacher in her past life, had a hidden identity. She was also a part-time illustrator. After all, in the children's description, the Grand Duke was an abuser. Just as they were picking mushrooms, a large black bear suddenly appeared behind them. Without a word, it lunged at them for the sake of taking care of two lovely children. Huey's and the Grand Duke happily reconciled. After being chased by the brown bear, Huey's used magic to knock down a beehive from a tree, successfully trapping the brown bear. Unfortunately, on the way back, it suddenly started pouring rain. The two had to take shelter in a nearby cave. The Grand Duke was curious how Huey's had tied up the children. Besides that, he had many other questions. Why would a person completely change overnight? Suddenly wanted to be a kind witch. Huey's explained that she had been very ill a few years ago and afterwards regretted her past life. Obviously, this perfunctory reason couldn't convince the Grand Duke. However, he did indeed slander Huey's for using black magic. Huey's never expected the Grand Duke would apologize. Did he have some request? I heard you abuse the children. No one would help someone who abuses children. The children always said they were locked up at home. I did that because it's dangerous outside. The Grand Duke's mansion has hundreds of rooms and dozens of courtyards. How can living in such a place be called imprisonment? But even noble children should go out and experience the world appropriately. While drawing witch characters then, she never imagined becoming one herself or meeting the story's protagonists. You don't know how much the children love jumping around in the forest. Besides, I heard that it was the Grand Duke who abandoned the children. The Grand Duke was surprised that the children thought this way, but come to think of it, it wasn't entirely wrong. He was often away from the mansion for long periods, carrying out various tasks assigned by the royal family. It wasn't unreasonable for the children to feel abandoned. They're still young, it's hard for them to understand adult circumstances. I just want their safety to be the top priority. Huey's finally understood that she had misjudged the Grand Duke earlier. He did love the children very much. He wasn't such a bad person after all. During my expedition, could you temporarily become their nanny? Huey's was surprised that this was what the Grand Duke wanted to ask. Without hesitation, she agreed immediately. The next second, she directly pulled the Grand Duke to the mansion where the little ones were. The moment she put on the uniform, Huey's felt like she had become a maid in the Grand Duke's house. However, the conditions here were far better than in the village. As soon as she arrived, she was called to the kitchen. Unexpectedly, she got lost because the mansion was too big. Luckily, she ran into Knight Dilu. However, his attitude was still as harsh as ever. The head chef had received notice from the Grand Duke to ask the new nanny about dinner. Huey suggested mixing favorite ingredients together like in beef stew. Since you know so much, go over there and make a dish. Mischievously, she used magic to levitate the two little ones. Although she only had 20 minutes, Huey's decided to give it a try. To everyone's surprise, she directly conjured up the ingredients. Well then, let's start preparing dinner. Moments later, the two little ones reluctantly came to the dining room with their brother. Huey's noticed that their atmosphere was very heavy, unlike people coming for a meal. She didn't know when she could go out and greet the children. Moreover, every dish on the table looked appetizing. Compared to them, her dish seemed too ordinary. Surprisingly, the Grand Duke ate cheese dish first, then he had someone serve it to Luna and Luca. After one bite, the little ones clamored for more. Cheese silently felt proud behind the door. Luna looked at the chef in surprise. I haven't had such a satisfying meal in a long time, thank you, but that dish wasn't made by me. It was time for the after-dinner dessert. Luna immediately spotted the cookie people among the desserts. She excitedly stood up and looked towards the door. The two little ones finally saw Huey's again, who they had been thinking about. At this moment, the Grand Duke spoke. Luna, Luca, dinner isn't over yet. If you're not backing your seats in 10 seconds, there will be no dessert. Huey's could only comfort the little ones, telling them to be obedient. The children were startled. Well, you can't call someone you've just met a cannibal witch. the sister decisively shielded her brother. Let us go immediately. Fortunately, she would be able to stay with the children from now on. The first lesson for the two little ones was how to plant carrots. After dinner, Hugh Eyes, who had been busy all day, finally had time to rest. Then she heard strange noises coming from the room. She opened the door in a panic and found the two little ones already sitting on the bed. Can we sleep here tonight? Faced with the little one's expectations, Hugh Eyes, of course, chose to agree. The bed here was big enough to accommodate them without issue. After lying down, the children began to express their sadness about leaving Huey's. We wanted to go find you, but brother wouldn't let us. But now we don't have to sneak away anymore. Huey's is at our house now, isn't she? Hearing this, Huey's felt a bit sad. She didn't know how to tell the children that she could only stay until the Grand Duke's expedition was over. But for now, she decided to cherish the present moment. Just as they were sleeping peacefully, little did they know that outside, chaos had erupted. Do you know who we are? The boys silently looked at Hugh Eyes, whispering, "Don't eat me." The Grand Duke was leading a search party, looking for his missing siblings throughout the night. Finally, they discovered that the children were already asleep in Huey's room. It's bad enough that a nanny is sharing a bed with nobles, but there are even cats and dogs on the bed. However, this wasn't included in the Grand Duke's mansion rules, so the Grand Duke immediately established a new regulation. From now on, the children must sleep in their own rooms. He thought Huey's would object, but surprisingly, she signed it without hesitation. He couldn't shake the feeling that he might have fallen into some kind of trap. Sure enough, he then heard Huey's ask if they could cultivate a plot of land. The children's current curriculum is too rigid, she said. At this age, play is learning. The vegetables we harvest together will surely taste even more delicious. The Grand Duke reluctantly wrote out a permission slip. The next day, he was dressed the two little ones neatly. Today we'll exercise by farming, she announced. However, this idea was met with discriminatory opposition. Physical training should be done in the training grounds, they argued, but in the end, they compromised under the children's threatening gazes. In the field, Luna and Luca enthusiastically sowed and planted. He was explained that knowledge has no good or bad. I don't taste good. Through gardening, the children could understand the lives of the people in their domain, something that rigid classroom learning couldn't provide. After a busy period, they finally got all the vegetables planted. The little ones were clamoring, eager to eat the vegetables they had planted with their own hands. It was then that Huey's noticed Luca's little rabbit Lulu was quite dirty. She wondered why they hadn't cleaned it, seeing that it was getting late. Huey's took out the sandwiches she had prepared earlier and handed them to the knight. He stared at the food for a long time without reacting. His brother Daniel, a picky eater, "This is really delicious," the children said. Hearing the children say this, the knight finally took a bite. Indeed, it was as delicious as they had said. Just as the two were chatting, the Grand Duke suddenly appeared. He always asked if he wanted to join them for a meal, as there was one sandwich left. Just as the Grand Duke was about to take it, the little ones came asking for it. So he watched helplessly as the last sandwich was given away. Then, quick as lightning, he snatched the one from the knight's hand, leaving the knight standing there, disappointed but unable to speak. The Grand Duke himself didn't know why his mind was only on food. There were still 3 days until the expedition. During this time, the knight's observations revealed nothing suspicious about Hugh Ice. The girl's name was Hugh Ice. After accidentally drowning in a river, she became the evil witch from fairy tales. His hand still tightly clutching the cookie, a sight that amused Hugh Eyes. She even used her own money to buy many gifts for the children. The Grand Duke then remembered that he had forcibly given Hugh Eyes compensation that day. He hadn't expected her to turn around and spend it all on the children. It was said that even the chef approved of Huey's actions. He reminded himself not to be fooled by the witch's kind exterior. The Grand Duke said aloud, "How could I possibly be fooled?" But his mind was filled with thoughts of ham, cheese, and egg sandwiches to the point where he could barely think straight. Just then, Huey's knocked and entered. "I just wanted to bring you a gift," she said, "for a 5-year-old child." The only thing they wanted to preserve was their mother's scent. While gardening, Huey's noticed that Lulu had become very dirty. That evening, she thought about washing the doll along with Luca's bath, so she discussed with Luca about bathing with Lulu today. Unexpectedly, the little one became anxious, saying, "No, Lulu has mommy's smell. We can't wash it away." These words reminded Hugh Eyes of her own childhood. Her mother had left when she was in 2nd grade. In the end, she had filled the refrigerator with side dishes. But Hugh Eyes hadn't eaten them even when they spoiled. She could empathize with that longing for a mother. Anyway, you ate my house. Shouldn't you say thank you? Bad children who don't say thanks must be punished. Luna and Luca were still only kindergarten age. How much they must miss their mother. She decided to give up on washing Lulu. It was Luca's only reminder of his mother, but she could give them the love their parents couldn't. If you have any requests, just tell me directly, okay? As soon as she finished speaking, Luca had an idea. He wise promised she would fulfill it tomorrow. The next day, she took the sleepy children to have a meal. The Grand Duke was eating quietly as usual. Today, Huey's cooking felt like a warm hearth, comforting the soul. However, the atmosphere was quite peculiar. The little ones were unusually quiet, staring intently at him. Normally, they would make some noise, and their spoons would drop a few times. When he picked up his cup again, he realized the children seemed to be imitating him. Beside him, Huey's also made a hushing gesture. Though the Grand Duke didn't know what they were up to, he decided to test if the children would follow him in eating cabbage. Sure enough, the two little ones were shocked at this sight. Unexpectedly, they both ate the cabbage anyway. Luna quickly shouted, "I won." This left the Grand Duke confused. What did she mean by won? Moreover, Huey started applauding at this moment. What on earth are you doing? Only then did he learn they were playing a game of imitating him. Huey's explained, children usually learn table manners by following adults. The sister instinctively hugged her brother, but seeing Huey's pick up a fork, she too was frightened. Most importantly, the Grand Duke's table manners are impeccable. Hearing this, the Grand Duke instantly became proud. Indeed, there's no better role model than me. How about rewarding the children with a bedtime story tonight? You're leaving tomorrow, aren't you? I hope you can create some beautiful memories with the children before you go. Also, make sure to ask the children what they really want. The Grand Duke cooperatively came to the table and asked the children if they had finished eating. Now let's decide today's winners. First, Luna endured eating something she doesn't like, setting a good example for the Empire's nobility. Luca didn't drop his fork once today and also bravely tried foods he dislikes. It's truly hard to choose between you, so today you're both winners. Now, what would you like as a reward? Chocolate, sleeping in, and skipping lessons are not options. To the Grand Duke's surprise, the children's request was so simple. They only wanted to play games with their brother. It wasn't even about going to some fancy amusement park, just using a blanket in the room. They could happily play a role-playing game, although it was a bit embarrassing to do this in front of Huey's. Hugging the children together was truly blissful. The tired children fell asleep immediately. Seeing them like this, Huey's decided to stop teasing them. Now I'll give you two choices. 1, be my food today. 2, eat cake with me. The Grand Duke had to return to handle work before the expedition. He used to think that the children didn't like playing with him. Huey's explained, the little ones just know you're busy. They actually love spending time with you. They notice you always checking the door and your watch while playing. You didn't realize they were always watching your expressions, did you? The Grand Duke then remembered how the little ones would ask if their brother was very busy and suggest he go work after they fell asleep. He realized he hadn't been a good brother after all. When your Highness returns, even in the midst of your busy schedule, please try to spend some time with the children. During that time, forget about work, just be their brother. Afterwards, Huey's gave the Grand Duke a necklace she had made. May you return safely under God's protection. Huey's, who thought she had fully integrated into the Grand Duke's mansion, realized it was all just her own wishful thinking. After giving the gift to the Grand Duke, Huey's happily prepared to return to her room to sleep. On the way, she smelled a fragrance from the kitchen. She suddenly remembered what the chef had said before, using the same ingredients, yet producing completely different flavors. She guessed it might be some kind of witch ability. However, she was happy to have shared meals with everyone during this time. If she could continue working here, everyone would still be pleasant to be around. The moment they saw the delicious cake, the children's eyes sparkled, but they still acted tough. You think we'd fall for that so easily? Meanwhile, in the kitchen, everyone was studying Huey's cooking. They were worried there might be something harmful in it, but the knight found no traces of magic in the food. Instead, there was a kind of nostalgic warmth in it. In any case, he felt there was nothing dangerous in it. However, the other servants in the kitchen were worried about black magic that could turn them into frogs. The knight thought it impossible as he opened the kitchen door. To his surprise, Huey's was standing outside and she was in tears. Seeing her loss of control, Huey's instinctively apologized and ran away. At this point, the servants started talking again, fearing Huey's might turn them into frogs. Fortunately, the head chef came out in time to stop them. Back in her room, he was very upset. she finally understood that everyone's kindness towards her was due to their trust in the Grand Duke. In fact, even the Grand Duke didn't fully trust her. She was sad about why she had to be the villain. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, it was the head chef. He bowed his head without hesitation and apologized. Moments later, they immediately sat at the dining table. Huey served freshly made carrot cake. The children looked uncomfortable, not liking carrots. I couldn't admit that I couldn't match up to Miss Ui's, so I found reasons to blame you instead. You even complimented me as handsome before, yet I did such a thing. He also brought a gift for Ui's. It was 4 snake legs. This is a precious ingredient I saw in my early years, a rare treasure that's hard to come by in a century. Ui's never expected to receive such a valuable gift. So she invited the chef to cook together in the kitchen tomorrow. Huey's heart, which had been sad just moments ago, suddenly warmed up. Perhaps step by step like this, one day she would receive everyone's genuine care. The next morning was the time for the Grand Duke to set off on his expedition. The little ones came out early to see their brother off. The Grand Duke felt pleasantly surprised. This was not at all like his usual brother and sister. In the past, they never had a good expression when he left. Luna insisted that the Grand Duke bring back gifts. Luca hoped that when his brother returned, he could still play with them. The Grand Duke was very pleased. He looked up to see he was expecting eyes, so he took Luna's hand. During the time I'm away, you'll be the head of the Grand Duke's household. It turned out that an hour ago. As a kindergarten teacher, Huey's knew children's tricks well. Using magic, she made cookie figures walk to the carrots. Huey had asked the Grand Duke to nominally appoint Luna as the head of the household. Even though under political struggles, women couldn't inherit titles. Luna liked to act like an adult, and she would become more mature when His Highness was away. Sure enough, Luna was very happy to hear this. She promised that in a world full of schemes and intrigues, she would protect the Grand Duke's father like a head of the household. Hearing Luna's grand words, the Grand Duke was at a loss for words. After kissing each of the little ones, he prepared to leave. When he returned this time, he would definitely spend more time with the children. Just as Huey said, let the children feel love. Luna, who had taken over as the head of the household, immediately turned Sandra. I'm now the head of the Grand Duke's household. I can't run around recklessly. However, behind her composure, she didn't forget to eat chocolate. Huey's immediately brought up the words left by the former head of the household that one shouldn't use the authority of the head to satisfy personal desires. However, Luna had already planned ahead. Then let's consider it as my commemoration as the head of the household, giving everyone in the Grand Duke's family a piece of chocolate. This way, not only the people in the Grand Duke's mansion, but also Luna and Luca could eat chocolate. Moreover, under Luna's leadership, Luca also became pitifully obedient, being watched by his sister every day while eating, not allowed to drop his fork. However, this also allowed everyone to return to the small cabin for meals. Although it could only last until the Grand Duke returned, Knight Daniel also gradually integrated with everyone. Mr. Gentleman says carrots are delicious. The children immediately started eating happily. The girl introduced herself as Luna, 7 years old, and her brother is Luca, 5 years old. During this time, Luna also developed a bad habit of loving to mock people. The victims endured too much discrimination. Huey wanted Luna to stop being so sharp-tongued. Luna wouldn't change because anyone could see she was the Duke's sister. Equally sharp-tongued and loving to mock people. At this moment, Luca ran excitedly to Huey's. We're having fried rice today, right? It turned out that last time, when she fried leftover rice as a midnight snack, the 2 little ones had caught her. After trying it once, they kept asking for it. In no time, the fragrant fried rice was ready. Normally, such a dish would surely arouse everyone's suspicion. The children wouldn't think that much into it. Besides, in the cottage, everyone could squeeze together to eat. In the Grand Duke's mansion, the huge table always felt cold and empty. How about asking the Grand Duke to change to a smaller table later? Surprisingly, the knight agreed to Huey's request. I'll probably leave when the Grand Duke returns. At the same time, in the eastern part of the empire, the Grand Duke was resting with his troops. During his time away, he was comforted by the necklace Huey had given him. He wondered if the little ones were eating well. Soon it was mealtime. The Grand Duke looked at the simple meal served and had no appetite. They have been abandoned by their parents. This reminded Huey of her own childhood. Now he missed Huey's cooking terribly, thinking about quickly finishing so he could go back and eat. He completely forgot about his plan to dismiss Huey upon his return. Suddenly, a woman came running towards them, crying and shouting, "Please save my child." He was kidnapped by the man-eating bees in the forest. The Grand Duke sensed trouble. Man-eating bees fed on humans. The bees must have caught the child to feed their larvae. If they hadn't eaten him immediately, there might still be hope. The reconnaissance team had already located the man-eating bees, so the Grand Duke ordered an immediate investigation team to be formed. Finally, they spotted the man-eating bees on a mountain. As the swords were shot out, the man-eating bees were mostly burned to ashes. The missing child was also found. The Grand Duke joyfully took the child. Just then, the queen bee charged towards them. The Grand Duke was stung by the man-eating bee while protecting the child. In his haste, he had accidentally revealed an ability that shouldn't have been seen by others. The military doctor rushed over to treat him. Fortunately, under the protection of the necklace, the poisonous needle didn't pierce his chest. She felt even more sympathy for the two children before her. Why abandon such adorable children? Looking at the broken necklace, the Grand Duke had a bad feeling. He had to return immediately. The carefree little ones, still unaware of the impending danger. Luca eagerly asked how many more days until their brother would return. He wise had heard that the emperor ordered all the monsters in the forest to be driven out. This would take at least half a month, but 10 days had passed without any news. She could only tell the little one that their brother would return when all the broccoli in the vegetable garden had grown. Let's watch the broccoli grow strong together while waiting for your brother to come back. Luca was also looking forward to eating broccoli with his brother and Hugh Eyes. The next evening, Hugh Eyes was exhausted after a busy day, but the two little ones were still excited and refused to sleep. Hugh Eyes was amazed that after working in the fields early in the morning, taking horseback riding lessons and playing ball, they still had energy. She sighed. She used magic to catch the running little ones, brought them to their room, and lulled them to sleep with a bedtime story. Luna volunteered to read Thumbelina. Her vocabulary had greatly improved recently, so she was obsessed with reading fairy tales. With Luna's reading voice, Luca's successfully entered dreamland. Cheese thought about taking them to their respective rooms after they fell asleep. At this time, Luna said she also wanted to be Thumbelina, able to sleep in a walnut bed. She made many attempts to adapt to her new environment. She even developed human-shaped cookies. She wasn't sure if they were the story's protagonists, even knowing she might be killed by the protagonists. Suddenly, a flash of lightning startled all three of them. It also started raining heavily outside. The children who were about to fall asleep were now wide awake. Luca choked up, wanted to sleep in Huey's room for the night. Huey's was in a dilemma. The Grand Duke had clearly stated before that they couldn't sleep together, but in this kind of weather, the children would be scared, right? Looking to the side, Luna had already disappeared. She had directly sat under the bed. She even declared that how could the heir of the Grand Duke's family be afraid of thunder? As a result, her words were abruptly proven wrong. With no other choice, she had to let them stay. Soon, the two little ones fell asleep again. The time they spent together felt like their first day at the Grand Duke's house. At that moment, the sound of clashing weapons was heard again. Huey's tiptoed out to take a look. She discovered that a fight had broken out outside. At first, she thought it was just soldiers causing trouble after drinking. But upon closer inspection, she saw it was Knight Daniel. Moreover, the person he was fighting wasn't wearing the uniform of the Grand Duke's servants. After coming out of Luna's room, the man looked at Huey's. Is this woman the nanny? She now only wanted to be a kind witch who cared for these children. After finishing the cake, Luna fearfully asked Huey's, "Are you planning to fatten us up before eating us?" "Where are the children?" Sensing danger, Huey's quickly ran back to the room. The knight also shouted that the children couldn't be handed over. Although she wasn't clear about the current situation, she knew she had to hide the children first. Cheese approached the bed and woke up the two little ones. The two groggily got up. For Cheese, taking away two children at once was a bit difficult, so she took out a bottle of potion. "Would you like to try Thumblinga's strawberry juice?" Hearing it was food, both little ones were eager to taste it. After drinking, Luca realized it wasn't strawberry-flavored. Before they could react, the two little ones shrank. Cheese placed them on her palm. Just then, the door was smashed open. "Where are the children? They're not in their own rooms. If you don't want to end your life in your prime, tell me quickly." Cheese hurriedly hid the children behind her back. Seeing Cheese's silence, the villain became more agitated and shouted. Thinking the children would surely be frightened, she knew she had to resolve the current situation first, so she put the children in her pocket. "Waking up my children, I've had enough to protect the lovely children." "Are those cookies made from people too?" Huey's finally resorted to using black magic after a burst of magical bombardment. The previously arrogant assassin instantly turned into a small green frog. Huey's mercilessly kicked it out the window. Hearing the commotion, the assassins outside rushed in. This must be the nanny's room where the children are hidden. Huey's transformed their weapons one by one into sausages. Then the cats and dogs charged forward. I'm still angry. It was so hard to get the children to sleep, but this also harmed her, ultimately making her the evil witch in others' eyes. While feeling sad, she was almost caught off guard by an assassin. Fortunately, a dog rushed forward and bit the man's clothes. They told Huey's to leave with the children first, saying they would handle this. Moments later, Huey's returned to her original gingerbread house. The children were indeed terrified. She quickly comforted them, saying everything was fine. Wait here for a moment, I'll go find a bed. The shrunken children became very excited seeing the cookies. Luca even wanted to crawl into the sugar jar. Then Huey's prepared walnut beds for the two little ones. Huey's quickly took the children to wash up. Are you planning to eat us after we're washed? Luna asked suspiciously. Have you ever seen anyone dress a roast chicken? Luna was delighted. This is exactly like in Thumbelina. If only we had flower petal blankets, it would be perfect. Of course, Huey's would fulfill this small request. Sleep well here and have sweet dreams, smelling the flower fragrance. Luca's eyes soon began to blink sleepily. Luna, however, kept her eyes wide open. What if those bad people come again? Yuzu drew Huey's attention. Although Luca didn't remember, he did. When they were little, a nanny had almost suffocated him with a pillow. Hearing Luna say this, Huey's finally understood why they disliked nannies so much. It's right now, Luna, I'm here. Leave the adult matters to me, you just have sweet dreams. Meanwhile, the knight had already tied up all the intruders. However, the sausages scattered all over the ground still puzzled him. Where were the witch and the children? Someone pointed at the wardrobe, saying they were hiding inside. He hadn't expected the wardrobe to be so useful in a critical moment. He passed through the wardrobe and entered the cottage. He saw the children already fast asleep. It's all thanks to Miss Huey's. I'll make sure to report this to the Grand Duke. A perfect fairy tale where Thumbelina and the prince were almost kidnapped by frogs but were saved by the witch in the inn. However, the Grand Duke, who had just returned, looked at the mess everywhere and the shattered photos of Luna and Luca on the ground. Huey's retorted playfully. To her surprise, Luna replied, "We've never eaten roast chicken." He thought something terrible had happened to his younger siblings. Why had he finally been able to stay and take care of the children? After the turmoil, Huey's returned to the Grand Duke's mansion once again. The panicked Grand Duke instinctively wanted to question the whereabouts of the children. To his surprise, he looked down and saw his younger siblings safe and sound. Later, after the knight's explanation, the Grand Duke learned that the assassins had dug a tunnel to get in. Moreover, they were incredibly strong, with physiques like the barbarians from the north. The Grand Duke had experienced their formidability countless times on the battlefield. It was no small feat that the mansion's guards had managed to fend them off. You've done a remarkable thing. The knight confessed that it was all thanks to Huey's. Without him, the children would probably have been kidnapped. He had turned the kidnappers' swords into sausages and broccoli. Meanwhile, Huey's had already packed all her belongings using magic. Now she didn't know how to say goodbye to the children. At that moment, the Grand Duke suddenly appeared at the door. I must apologize for my rashness earlier. To think I spoke unkindly to the savior of my younger siblings. Suddenly, the Grand Duke noticed the broken window. Huey's, afraid that her act of turning people into frogs would be discovered, quickly said she would pay for the window. Huey's mistakenly assumed they were from a poor family. She comforted them and urged them to go to sleep. Thinking about how she was about to part with the little ones, and how she had turned the intruders into frogs, she unconsciously began to cry as she thought about it. The Grand Duke was momentarily at a loss. Hearing Huey say, I actually always suspected you had paranoid delusions. The walls of the Grand Duke's mansion are so thick, and you always think the food is poisoned. But yesterday, when I heard Luna talk about what happened before, I realized, haven't you heard the rumors about my parents' sudden deaths? They were in perfect health at the time, with no reason for sudden deaths. No poison was detected either. When they were found, they had already stopped breathing. That's why I'm so obsessive about my younger siblings. That year I was only 17 years old. Even if I were to be assassinated one day, I would persist until Luca could become the head of the family. Unexpectedly, he was burst into tears again. Your Highness, you're still a child. It must have been so hard. The Grand Duke wondered if he was still considered a child, but considering that witches could live for hundreds of years, she was indeed young. Nevertheless, Huey still wanted to know if she could come and see the children in the future. She received a negative response from the Grand Duke. Disappointed, she turned to leave. Unexpectedly, the Duke called her back. What I mean is, let's sign a new contract to take care of the lovely children, the beautiful and wealthy, which was willing to be a nanny for the Grand Duke's family. Moments later, the two little ones were tucked in bed. I don't think that witch is so scary. Right, sister, Luca whispered. Huey's overheard their conversation at the door. Huey's looked at the contract before her in disbelief. The term was set until a nanny was no longer needed. This was exactly what she wanted most. Without hesitation, Huey's excitedly picked up the pen. She wrote that she would raise and care for the children well. The Grand Duke took it, not forgetting to quip who draws hearts on a contract. Huey's explained that she was simply too happy. This also made the Grand Duke unable to understand why Huey's was so fond of his younger siblings. She shared the same sentiment. He couldn't understand why the Grand Duke would extend the nanny's contract. Moreover, he was to personally take charge of monitoring the nanny's actions. And he firmly believed that Huey's words made sense. The children's contact with soil would indeed boost their immunity. This made Kai overthink. Could it be that his master was falling in love? I didn't expect you'd be so disappointed about not being able to work with the nanny. Are you still gonna linger here? The knight had no choice but to leave, grumbling. The Grand Duke thought about the captives they had caught earlier. They had detected traces of magical power from them, identical to that of the Crown Prince's magician, but for now they could only buy their time. Currently, there were very few families allied with the Grand Duke's house. If they stirred up public sentiment, they could easily be branded as traitors. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Palace, the Crown Prince was facing the Emperor's wrath. After ensuring they were sleeping soundly, she happily left the room. This assassination attempt seemed extremely reckless to him. The princess didn't miss the chance to mock her brother, saying she wouldn't be so stupid. This angered the Emperor even more. He believed that if the Crown Prince continued like this, he would ruin his life's work. Since you've replaced your sister as Crown Prince, you must live up to the position. Do you know how people compare you to the Grand Duke? To restrict the Grand Duke's actions, the princess had given up her claim to the throne while also establishing a rule that women couldn't become heads of families. But then Luca, the third child, was born. To kill him, they kept sending him to battlefields, but despite this, the Grand Duke always returned unscathed. Afterwards, the Emperor dismissed the Empress and the princess, wanting to speak with the Crown Prince alone. As soon as they left, the princess eagerly began to mock the Crown Prince's foolish actions. Has he gone mad? He only had his looks going for him. If his brain doesn't work either, it's terrible. These words displeased the Empress. What an insolent whore, but to secure his right to inherit the throne, he could only endure. He plotted in his heart, vowing to make or pay someday. The Crown Prince left behind still couldn't understand. He believed the witch was on their side. He had intended to use the witch's power to kidnap Luca. To confirm the location of the sacred artifact rumored to have the power to conquer the world in the Grand Duke's family, but the reality was that the witch wasn't on their side, but on the other side. For her lonely life, having the children's company was truly wonderful. No one expected little Luca to be so greedy. He even wanted to taste the fertilizer man for the plants. While the Grand Duke was still pondering about the captives, he wise pushed a cart of fertilizer into the greenhouse. She didn't know the Grand Duke was there, too. Luna, seeing Huey's arrive, immediately ran over. Look how big these seedlings have grown. Huey's then remembered that she had used up all the broccoli to deal with the intruders earlier, using magic. These were all temporary seedlings planted afterwards. Seeing the Grand Duke about to speak, afraid he wouldn't find a suitable excuse. Huey's instinctively wanted to cover his mouth. The Grand Duke skillfully dodged and told the children it seemed they had given fertilizer. Luca turned his head in confusion, asking what fertilizer was. It's the tasty food for the broccoli. Huey's was relieved that the Grand Duke didn't expose her, but instead explained to the children based on what she had brought. Put the fertilizer at the roots and they'll be able to eat it. Then they'll grow strong. Luca's eyes immediately lit up. Can I eat that too? This statement frightened both adults, who hurriedly said, don't eat it. A moment later, Luca returned to the cottage, full and satisfied. Cheese also breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, he didn't eat the fertilizer in the end. Today's meal was prepared with pork chops and a lettuce salad. The four of them sat around the cozy little table. Early the next morning, Luna wore a troubled expression. Her little brother, Luca, had wet the bed. The Grand Duke began to complain about today's meal. Why is there rabbit food on the table? They taste better than they look. I personally roasted sesame sauce for this. You'll change your mind after you taste it. After hearing this, the children were eager to try it. But the Grand Duke was still grumbling. Eating raw cabbage is something even starting farmers wouldn't do. At this moment, Luna's voice was heard, brother. Please don't complain at the dinner table. Are there any bad adults who refuse to eat what they're given? Luca also added, I eat whatever I'm given. Isn't brother the same? The Grand Duke was shocked that his younger siblings spoke like this. He had no choice but to resign himself, pick up his spoon, and start eating silently. A moment later, he had cleared his plate. It seems the rabbit rice suits your taste, doesn't it? The Grand Duke hadn't expected this. He used to persuade his siblings to eat carrots, and now he was being lectured by them. During this time, the Grand Duke had made many changes. He not only allowed the connection between the wardrobe and the gingerbread house, but also permitted them to return to the small house for meals anytime. Because she offered cookies when entertaining guests, rumors spread about the Black Forest witch-baking people. She quietly went out to assess the situation, considering whether to seize the chance to escape. She spotted Hugh Eyes hiding behind a tree outside the house. But in some areas, he was still very strict. After dinner, the children played outside very happily. This situation made Huey's side with emotion, feeling like they were all one family. In the Grand Duke's mansion, the dining room for 3 people was far too large. Mealtime for the children was also obligatory. This was all His Highness's fault. After pondering for a moment, the Grand Duke finally agreed to change to a smaller place. To show her gratitude, Huey's gave him a lot of chocolate. She heard that the palace was holding a banquet to celebrate this battle victory. Having just returned home, it was hard to leave again. He always wanted to suggest taking the children along, but then she heard the Grand Duke say, rather than that, you've always treated me like a child. I'm the Grand Duke. I hope you won't treat me like a weak child. Seeing that her pitying attitude had been discovered, Hughes could only leave disappointingly, but the Duke called her back, saying, I have more to say, let's add another rule. Hughes took the rules and checked. The addition was actually, from now on, there can be no physical contact with the employer. Shayaji encountered danger on his first outing. After the Grand Duke made the new rule, Hughes also launched a counterattack for the Grand Duke to be a qualified brother. She hoped he would stop using a sarcastic tone in the future. Luna had deeply inherited the Grand Duke's manner, which had already affected her proper education. Unexpectedly, the Grand Duke said, Luna's personality is exactly like her mother's. To think that Mom has become a stumbling block on the path of growth, seeing that the Grand Duke was speaking sarcastically again, he was quickly used magic to cover his face. 2 people in front seemed to be discussing village matters. I heard the Grand Duke's mansion is sealed off. Afterwards, the mansion encountered a brief impasse. That day, several of them went to the festival island to welcome the new year. The entire upper class would gather there for a grand New Year's celebration. Little Luca was so excited he couldn't sleep at night, and because of the rule about no touching, the atmosphere in the carriage was unusually awkward. At this time, Huey suggested playing a fairy tale story relay game. Each person just needed to add 1 sentence. However, the game encountered a setback right at the start. Huey's had just begun when the Grand Duke criticized her. She had to restart the story's opening, but under the children's relay, the story turned into them meeting Huey's in the forest. They ate delicious carrot cake, and in the end, Luca, Luna, their brother, and Huey's lived happily together. This ending made the 2 adults even more embarrassed. To ease the atmosphere, they had to switch to playing a word chain game. Unexpectedly, the carriage was attacked by snowmen during the journey. To protect the children, the Grand Duke decided to face them alone. He even used holy power to defend the carriage. Because holy power and magic were incompatible, Huey's couldn't go forward to help. The little ones, however, were very calm. They even told Huey's not to worry and said they'd continue the word game when he returned. Meanwhile, the Grand Duke was ruthless, swiftly taking down 2 snowmen. This scene inexplicably made Huey's heart flutter. She didn't even listen carefully to the children's word game. Cheese recalled that this world had only one Grand Duke who inherited the title after his parents' early demise. Thanks to his outstanding abilities, he had managed to avoid the impacts of war. She just looked out the window, murmuring, brother is so handsome. Luca quickly asked if handsome was also a word in the game. While Huey's was entranced by the Grand Duke's beauty, the aftermath of the snowman was already dealt with. The little ones couldn't wait to go out and find their brother, but Huey's couldn't leave the carriage due to the holy power. They had also felt holy power when they came to the small house before. She wondered who in the Grand Duke's family possessed this kind of power. In the carriage that had lost its holy power, magic could not be used either. Just then, there was a crashing sound from behind. A snowman had climbed onto the carriage. The Grand Duke and the children also noticed the anomaly, but before they could come to the rescue, the horse got startled and ran away, seeing the children about to rush towards them to prevent the snowman from harming the children at the moment when the carriage's defense was forced. Cheese controlled the carriage to run straight down the mountain while shouting to the children not to worry. The carriage finally overturned near a tree just as she was relieved that she was unharmed. The next second, the Grand Duke grabbed her hand. "You seem to be all right for now. Can you stand up and walk now?" Cheese looked at her sprained ankle. Unexpectedly, she heard the Grand Duke's question. "You don't know healing magic and you can't even ride a broom. Aren't all witches supposed to have this skill?" When Huey's indicated that she couldn't do either, the Grand Duke fell in a deep thought. At that moment, the two people noticed Cheese behind them. They panicked, shouting, "The man-eating witch is behind us." "Then I'll have to carry you." So the Grand Duke carried Huey's as they walked back through the snow. It was Huey's first time being carried like this. Judging by the Grand Duke's appearance, he must have run here. His neck showed clear signs of frostbite and his hair was wet. Instinctively, she pulled up the collar of his shirt. "You should wear your clothes more tightly." However, the intimate atmosphere didn't last for even a second. The two started bickering again over old issues. On the other side, the little ones were very worried about Huey's safety. Luna was afraid that her brother might get into trouble on his way to rescue. Unexpectedly, she turned her head and saw a shocking scene to her surprise. She could actually pair her beloved big sister with her brother. After smirking, she realized that Huey's foot was injured. She hurriedly joined her brother in comforting her. Unexpectedly, this even aroused the Grand Duke's jealousy. Huey's knew that the Grand Duke was someone who wouldn't tell the children even if he was hurt. He would just silently endure the pain. Therefore, he looked both great and lonely. After treatment with the potion, Huey's was already better. Run, despite Chee's immediate attempt to explain that it was all just rumors, no one stayed to listen to her. However, the carriage had just crashed, so they could only go to a nearby town to rest for now. Upon reaching the inn, the accompanying knights all seemed very excited. The innkeeper's cooking skills were also very good. Seeing that all the dishes were served but the Grand Duke hadn't arrived yet, Luca couldn't help but ask curiously. Huey's was touched. Luca was now willing to share delicious food even when he was so hungry. Huey's told them to eat first. The little ones were all very careful. They unanimously agreed that food should be eaten while it's hot. When Huey said it could be reheated later, Luna finally picked up her spoon to enjoy the delicious meal. Now, whether it was unfamiliar food or dishes made by the mansion's head chef, they could eat them properly. At this moment, the Grand Duke also arrived at the inn. As soon as he came, he asked if the food suited his younger siblings' tastes. Perhaps due to the heavy snow outside, Huey's noticed thick snow on the Grand Duke's clothes. Before she could remind him, a knight came over to propose a toast. To set an example for the children, Huey's declined. Looking at the Grand Duke raising his glass before her, his level of handsomeness could make him a model for beer advertisements. However, the snow on him concerned Huey's more. She really wanted to shake it off for him, but because of the no-touch agreement she had signed, she could only lean close and blow on it. This action startled the Grand Duke. In the end, he had to take off his coat and hand it to Huey's. "In this situation, should I say thank you? But I've satisfied your good intentions, so you should thank me." At this moment, Luna on the side had another strange fantasy. Luna, watching all this from inside the house, decided not to run away. Instead, she went out and called the Huey's. She imagined how Knight Daniel would look if he saw this scene, but unexpectedly learned that Daniel was a holy knight. No wonder she could sense holy power before. After dinner, Huey's took the little ones to find their rooms. It was said they were staying in the largest room of the inn. Unexpectedly, upon opening the door, they saw the Grand Duke. The innkeeper behind them questioned this sight. Cheese explained there was a room overlap. This has never happened before. The innkeeper then immediately covered his mouth shyly. "Could it be? You two want the children to sleep in a separate room." The once perceived man-eating, which had now successfully gained everyone's affection. Even the innkeeper mistook her for the children's mother. This also puzzled the Grand Duke greatly. Cheese didn't resemble the children at all. The innkeeper awkwardly explained, "A handsome man, a beautiful woman, and adorable children. It just looks like a family." Hearing the compliment, Cheese also felt shy. "Am I a bit pretty?" Actually, he knew the answer. It was because she wasn't wearing a nanny's clothes, but a dress that only wealthy young ladies could afford. Because of this, rumors had spread in the mansion about the Grand Duke having ulterior motives towards the nanny. Just then the knights passed by the door. Unfortunate for them, they learned they had to share a room with the Grand Duke. Luca made a mistake in bed. Could you help us? Upstairs, they found Luca crying and apologizing. I'm sorry, I'm already 5 years old, but I still wet the bed. Extremely reluctant, they eventually had to accept it. Huey's also led the little ones into their room. Soon, Luca was already asleep. Luna, comforted by Hugh Eyes, also obediently entered dreamland. She wanted to use the spare time to study magic. However, after reading for just a moment, she felt drowsy. Suddenly, a loud noise came from outside the window. Opening the door, she saw angels blowing trumpets. It seemed the Pope's midsummer was safe and sound. Only then did Hugh Eyes notice the Grand Duke standing on the balcony too. Were these angels summoned by Pope Midsummer? Don't you know Midsummer has the ability to create illusions? Hearing this, Hugh's could only turn her face away awkwardly. After speaking, the Grand Duke went back to fetch red wine and 2 glasses. It's not work hours now. You shouldn't have a reason to refuse, right? After accepting, Hugh's found the wine surprisingly delicious. She also learned that people here drink this wine every New Year. The Grand Duke, looking at Hugh's smiling face, couldn't help but let his thoughts wander. She seemed to know a lot of things, yet also seemed to know nothing. It seemed the lake water left by the water spirits was to blame. Was it because you were nervous sleeping in a new bed? Luca quietly explained it's because Lulu wasn't here. His sister mercilessly exposed him. You wet the bed even when Lulu was around. A mysterious and suspicious person. Later, the Empire held the New Year's ceremony. The little ones also went with their brother to see the Pope, but they were told the children and Nanny should wait in the reception room first. At this time, someone called out to the Grand Duke, "We haven't seen each other for a year since the celebration. Is the Pope going to see you first this year too? Seems Midsummer still favors you as always." The Grand Duke knew it appeared that way to others, but in reality, the Pope only disliked him. Sure enough, after greeting the Pope, he only responded perfunctorily, then he walked straight towards Knight Daniel. Long time no see, Daniel. Seeing the ambiguous atmosphere between the two, the Grand Duke just wanted to escape. A moment later, a few people met privately. The Pope was completely different from earlier. He directly asked Knight Daniel, "Are you happy choosing the Grand Duke over me?" These words made the Grand Duke pause while drinking tea. "Don't worry, I pay him well. Can't you just take it as my complaint about losing my only lover?" Afterwards, they talked about Hugh Eyes. The Pope found that she was different from the rumors and even got along well with the children. He didn't see anything suspicious. If anything, her clothes were too luxurious for a nanny. The Grand Duke quickly changed the subject, mentioning his plan to have his younger siblings attend the palace banquet. Lulu turned out to be their toy rabbit from home. Huey's thought she could use her teleportation magic to help retrieve it. The Pope immediately showed a serious expression. Is it really okay for the children to attend the banquet? Unexpectedly, Huey's first time in the palace would face such a big challenge. Facing the Pope's doubts about the children, the Grand Duke just smiled and said, "You can see for yourself tonight." Meanwhile, Huey's was making final preparations for the children. If you feel nervous, take a deep breath. If something in your mouth doesn't taste good, don't spit it out. Quickly put something delicious in your mouth instead. If you don't know what to do, just follow your brother's lead. The children's answers were all perfect. The month-long etiquette training had finally come to an end. By this time, the Grand Duke was also ready. As he came downstairs, everyone stood up to head to the palace. Huey's was also allowed to attend as a nanny, standing at the back for a moment. The Emperor arrived at the dining room. He immediately spotted the little ones seated at the table. "Oh, my dear nephews have really come and join us. I prepared special dishes for you. You'll surely be able to eat everything, won't you?" Faced with the Emperor's words, both little ones obediently began eating the vegetables in front of them. This level was still very simple for them. However, this alone left everyone astounded. It seemed the children were known as angels. If they continued to serve dishes like this, there would be no problem at all. Just as Hugh Eyes was thinking this, the next course turned out to be escargot. Luna quickly covered her brother's mouth. "We don't have a home. There was a big fire in our house." This level of difficulty shocked all 3 of them. Knowing the children were coming, how could they still serve as cargo? Fortunately, the Grand Duke had given instructions earlier. If there were dishes the children found difficult to eat, Huey should help, so she quietly told the children to do just as they had practiced. Then, before they put it in their mouths, she used an exchange spell to swap the snails for sausages. She then ate the escargot dish in place of the children. The Grand Duke seemed to have known in advance that there would be such challenging dishes and had rehearsed beforehand. Soon, the next course was served. Unexpectedly, this dish was even more challenging. Even the Grand Duke was eating with a troubled expression. Cheese took the opportunity to swap his dish in her own mouth as well. Since coming to this world, it had been a long time since she'd eaten tripe. Just then a female voice rang out, "My goodness, Gerard. You spit out your food in the middle of the meal." The crown prince was instantly at a loss. Cheese only understood when she saw the anger on several faces. It seemed the royal family were all antagonists. After the meal, the crown prince was vomiting by the wall. He wise hadn't expected to encounter him like this. If I'd known he was such a beauty, I would have sought him out myself. He wise was surprised to learn that the crown prince had tried to find her before. It must have been during the evil witch incident. From then on, Huey's was labeled as the cannibal witch. People around her were too afraid to approach. That's why we're here. After hearing this, Huey's felt something was off, but she didn't pursue it further and went to hang the laundry. The next moment, she was questioned about why she hadn't helped that day. The crown prince wanted to say more, but was stopped by his aide behind him. Huey's watched them leave like this. It seems she would need to inquire about this matter. Unexpectedly, Luca followed her, asking fearfully, "Aren't you angry? You won't eat me, will you?" Huey's replied, "We'll go mushroom picking in the forest later, so I won't catch you." This made the little one even more scared. After finishing the laundry, the two children followed Huey's to the forest. "You can go pick 10 mushrooms over there," she instructed. The little ones were very curious. It was their first time seeing mushrooms growing naturally. They had always been kept indoors before. Cheese hadn't realized how pitiful the children's situation had been. Keeping children locked up was nothing short of abuse. She decided that even if their parents came looking, she wouldn't let them take the children away. So she planned to take them to the village the next day. They could eat delicious food, watch street performances, and buy pretty clothes to wear. "Let's do all the things you couldn't do while staying at home," she suggested. At that moment, Lucas said, "If only our brother were here too." Indeed, the children's story about the house burning down must have been a lie. What circumstances could have led to such young siblings being abandoned? Wang Xiaoji almost lost one on his first outing. Cheese took the children to the village, and their first stop was a clothing store. She usually made her own clothes, and Elle's help with her shoes. After much deliberation, Huey's transformed her house into a charming gingerbread house. She hoped to change people's perception of her. But for the children's long-term stay, she needed to build good relationships with the villagers. Even though the shopkeeper didn't seem welcoming, Huey's approach with sincerity, "I'd like to buy some clothes and shoes for the children. Money is not an issue." The shopkeeper, seeing the children, whispered to others, suspecting they were kidnapped. They didn't want to accept the order, but feared Huey's might turn them into frogs. Luna, observing everything, couldn't stand it anymore. "I'm very unhappy now. How can you treat a customer so rudely?" Huey's had no choice but to pull the about to explode Luna away from the shop. As soon as they stepped out, they were stopped by an old lady from the neighboring electromagnetic wall. "I see the children are clean and healthy. You don't seem like a bad person at all." So she began to select clothes for them. Moments later, they returned with arms full of purchases. Luna was curious how the witch had so much money for shopping. In truth, Huey's didn't know how to explain that she was incredibly wealthy. When she first arrived in this house, the basement was piled high with gold bars. She hadn't intended to use that money, but now with more people in the house. Just then, she overheard villagers chatting behind her. "I heard the Grand Duke has issued a huge reward for finding his missing son and daughter. His first instinct was to help search for them." She was about to ask a passerby what the children looked like when Luna diverted her attention. However, reality was cruel. People weren't convinced and remained very afraid. "That rabbit looks like Lulu." Just as Huey's was taking Luca over to look, she turned her head and Luna had vanished. Huey's immediately panicked. Could someone be so bold as to snatch a witch's child in broad daylight? After running a few steps, she found Luna trying to tear down a poster. Seeing her actions, discovered Luna's stammered, "I wanted to draw, but I couldn't find any paper." The naive Huey's believed her. "Next time, tell me first, okay? Let's go buy some paper and crayons now." Walking through the village, everyone was discussing the missing children. Some speculated they'd been kidnapped by the royal family. Meanwhile, the Grand Duke was staring at portraits of 3 people. "Lulu, where have your owners gone? What if something has happened to them?" Just then, a knight rushed in panicked. Someone spotted children matching their description at a clothing store near the Black Forest. They even heard the children being called Luna and Luca. At that moment, he was unaware of what tomorrow would bring. After a day out with the children, they finally returned home. She pondered what to do with the children tomorrow. From then on, Huey's life became very lonely. She could only entertain herself by enchanting cookies with magic. She used to lament how short a day was, but now it never seemed long enough. As she was thinking, Luca pushed open the living room door. He scampered up on a Huey's lap. Big sister is asleep. I'm scared. Just as he finished speaking, he saw Luna standing behind him. Huey's patted Luna's head. The little one was incredibly strong and such a responsible big sister. It must be exhausting taking care of her little brother. If it were her at that young age, without shelter, without good food, and without adult protection, she would have been crying nonstop. Huey's pulled both of them into her arms. From now on, leave the adult stuff to me. You just focus on being a 7-year-old child. She wished they could live like this forever, if only the children's father would never find them. The next morning, Huey's had just woken up when she heard a knock at the door. The moment she opened it, a sword thrust towards her. The girl who had simply taken in 2 children near her home was now on the brink of paying with her life. As Huey's opened the door, she saw the imposing Grand Duke. I'm here to execute you for kidnapping. Just then the children woke up. Seeing the situation, Luna quickly moved to stop her brother's violent act. Cheese finally realized that the man before her was the Grand Duke, and the 2 little ones were the missing son and daughter. Fortunately, the original owner, due to using forbidden soul transfer magic, left behind a pair of soul-swap cat and dog. No wonder their behavior had been strange before. This explained everything. The children hugged their brother's legs. If you execute her, I'll never eat again for the rest of my life. And I'll never eat carrots again either. This statement startled the Grand Duke, but you never liked carrots to begin with. It was then that he noticed the carrot cake on the table behind them. He knew how much his younger siblings used to hate carrots. Suddenly, he suspected that this infamous witch had done something. This was something many chefs hadn't been able to accomplish in years. The knight behind him also chimed in, wondering if the children had been brainwashed. After all, there were rumors of witches using black magic. Huey's was more concerned about the sword being brandished in front of the children. She wanted to use magic to turn the sword into a small animal, but discovered that it was imbued with holy power. Huey's remained silent for a long time. The Grand Duke suddenly shouted, I'm asking you what you did. This scared little Luca, who burst into tears. To prove her innocence, Huey's wanted the Grand Duke to taste the cake himself. However, he ordered the knight to take the cake back for inspection to check if it contained any drugs. Thinking about the cake she had made with the children being suspected like this, Huey's was furious.